But we have got standing by with us a special guest. He's a former NYSE chairman and CEO, Dick Grasso, on the phone with us to get his take on this. Dick, what do you make of this development?
Good morning, Betty. Great to be with you. Well, it's certainly not the end, not the beginning, but perhaps the end of the beginning. So I would say, as David said earlier in your program, you know, the appearance of hostile bids and people willing to finance deals like the T-Mobile AT&T deal tells me that the economy is getting a lot stronger, and that the greatest brand in financial services, the NYSE, is a very valuable brand that people will bid up for.
And the Nasdaq, you believe they can pull it off?
I believe that, you know, as they say, this is their opening bid to counter the Deutsche Boerse proposal. And I think what you want to look for, Betty, is the third bid to come, which is down the road.
Third bid. John.
Dick, it's John Erlichman. I've got to ask you, you said the brand. Look, Nasdaq's saying this new exchange would be known as Nasdaq NYSE Euronext. What do you think of that?
Well, you know, I would look to the book of Yogi on that, you know. I think it's important to remember that the NYSE has a global reach and a brand recognition that sits right up there with Disney and Coca-Cola. And while Nasdaq has done a terrific job, and Bob Greifeld clearly is a very aggressive guy, you know, he knows what the prize is, and the prize is that NYSE name and its opportunity to be extended into products beyond the equities business. So, you know, nothing is over till it's over.
Dick. But Dick, the thing is that the price, though, of the NYSE is at $38.96 right now. Seems to have trouble getting to that $42.50 level. So is this deal priced too high?
Well, you know, again, you have to ask yourself the question, what would you pay for the Mona Lisa?
You don't know until you put the bids in, right?
That's exactly right. And I wouldn't look at this proposal from Nasdaq to be its final bid. I would expect, you know, Bob being a very capable CEO, is not going to put out his final offer because he knows that Deutsche Boerse is going to counterbid him.
Right.
Dick, we have to talk about the personalities. You said Bob Greifeld is an aggressive guy. Duncan Niederauer is a more low-key guy. If ultimately Nasdaq wins the day here, will Duncan stay at the stock exchange?
Well, I think you have to put aside personalities when you're running a global business, and I think both of them recognize that they have talents. Perhaps they are very different, but that would make them a terrific partnership. You know, you don't want
they can get
of the
along?
Same. I would, you know, there are people who have said that Duncan will walk. Duncan is a very solid, very, very good businessman, and I think he'll do what is right for the institution. And if it's right for the institution, the combined entity, for him to be there in a partnership with Greifeld, I think he'll do it. And I think Bob is, you know, Bob is smart enough to recognize that, you know, Duncan has enormous talents he would bring to any organization.
Hey, Dick, it's Dominic here. I was talking to a number of traders this morning, including Joe Saluzzi over at Themis Trading, saying that he likes this Nasdaq deal because it's like an American deal. How much does this kind of patriotic effect really play into what's happening right now, both for regulators and lawmakers and the guys on the street?
Well, you know, there's certainly a warm appeal to the heart in that, Dominic, but the final gesture, if you will be price and strategic fit. And I think that you have to recognize the business is a global business. You don't want it to be a domestic business any longer because you'd put the U.S. and our capital markets at a competitive disadvantage.
Dick, how likely do you think, or I mean, would you bet that this could become a three-horse race here for the NYSE?
I'm sorry, Betty, you broke up a bit on me.
Could we see a third bidder come in, a three-horse race?
Oh, I don't think a third bidder will come in. I think that the bids from Deutsche Boerse and Nasdaq ICE will be raised.
By how much, you think?
Well, listen, you know, I like the round number of 50. Okay, but then again, you know, I also like the round number of 100. Come back to my observation. What would you pay for the Mona Lisa?
Right. It depends on how much cash and loans these guys can get.
Well, just remember, you know, J.P. Morgan recently wrote a check for $20 billion to finance Telephone's acquisition of T-Mobile. There's money out there. People recognize value in strategic combinations. You've already heard Nasdaq say they're going to double the amount of cost synergies to be recouped in 3 years. You know, those, I'm sure, are opening bids.
Dick, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you commenting on this. Dick Grasso, the former NYSE chairman and CEO with us. What a way to end the show.